My friends in Vince will be laughing at me now.
Yeah.
I say thank you to Tobago. Thank you. My friend Bossy here, JetBlue is fine here just now. Thank you to Tobago. Every update. Thank you to Tobago.
also pleased to report, let me just repeat that, contrary to uninformed commentary, I will, contrary to uninformed commentary, this PNM government has given the present THA administration some of the highest budgetary allocations ever since the formation of the THA, far more than former administrations like those opposite. I'm also pleased to report that the THA will receive its full allocation for fiscal year 2024. As per usual, beyond the budgetary allocations to the THA, an additional 678.5 million is allocated to various ministries and state agencies to undertake and execute major projects in Tobago, in keeping with their responsibility under the 6th schedule of the THA Act. Some of this expenditure by central government.
Good evening and welcome to the Tobago Updates post-budget briefing. Now, this evening, I have the pleasure of speaking with a number of distinguished gentlemen as I sit as the only lady at the table, but that is fine. This evening, we're going to have some lengthy but substantial discussions on what we've heard from the minister as he presented that 2024-2025 fiscal budget for Trinidad and Tobago. Now, if you are like me or anyone else that sits at this table, you know that that was a long budget. It was a very long budget, and we sat with bated breaths waiting to hear what Tobago's allocation would have been. And some persons have a number of opinions on that. I'm not going to give mine. I'm just here to hear from the gentlemen at the table. Now, if you have not been able or privileged enough to sit for even an hour of that 5.2 or I think
10 minutes
hours of discussion, then let me just give you a quick update. Now, the minister would have presented an overall budget that had an expenditure of 59.7 billion and a revenue. This is for the upcoming revenue of a predicted revenue of 54.2 billion and a fiscal deficit of 5.5 billion. And where the allocation for Tobago is concerned, we see that 2.59 billion was allocated to Tobago, with recurrent expenditures accounting for 2.37 billion, development budget being 205 million, and URP getting 18 million and CPEP 9.2 million. Now, this evening, the table is full of distinguished gentlemen, as I said before, who have some opinions that you may agree with or you may disagree with. But even as you are watching live this evening, we are asking you to, exercise some decorum in the comment section. All opinions are valid, but please respect the opinions of each and everyone that sits on this panel this evening and respect the opinions of the persons in the comment section. We are free to exercise our political views as well as our economic views. All opinions are valid. Let's just respect each other's opinion. Now, this evening, on the panel with me, I want to start from my far right. I have Mr. Barry Jofield, who is on the panel this evening.
Barry Nelson.
Barry Nelson, sorry, Mr. Jofield will be joining me very, very soon, who is the economist. Now, we have political activist Barry Nelson. We have two Barrys, but we didn't put the two Barrys at the same time. We have Mr. Barry Jofield, who will be joining us for the second segment. He is an economist. He will also be joined, hopefully very soon, by Councillor Petalan Roberts, who is currently the secretary in the division of finance. So we will have that conversation afterwards. But on my far right, I have Mr. Barry Nelson, who is a political activist, followed by Mr. Curtis Williams, who is the chairman of the Tobago division of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce. And very close to me, I have a former secretary, Mr. Kwesi Devines, and I assure you that I do not bite. So hopefully we have a great discussion this evening. I look forward to hearing the opinions of each and every one of you. First off, obviously, we are all here to discuss Tobago's allocation. And, Kwesi, since you are closest to me, you have the privilege of starting off the discourse by giving us, first of all, your overall thoughts on the budget presentation given by the minister this evening and your opinions on the allocation given to Tobago.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for throwing me into the hot seat quite quickly, Chanel. But really and truly, the easy thing for anyone to say is Tobago did not get enough money. And we always go down that road. What I've noticed is that the Minister of Finance has said some very interesting things. That one, that Tobago actually is going to receive an increase of over 20 million on the allocation last year. And as well that the 2.59 billion represents one of the highest and a continued trend of the highest allocation to Tobago, notwithstanding the requests that have been made. The truth be told, I tend to look at the budget in terms of where does Tobago go from here, because we now have to get extremely focused. At least that is what the practice was when I was there. And whether we got 300 million or 3 billion, whatever the case might be, is get extremely focused and say, listen, these are our priorities. This is what we need to get done. This is where the funds are going to be spent. And for the current Tobago House of Assembly, I think the people of Tobago are dying to know what are their priorities, so that we can know that, listen, we are going to focus very specifically on a certain type of tourism. We're going to focus on a certain type of agriculture, whatever the case may be. How are we going to bolster our private sector? How are we going to support the private sector? How are we going to stop the decline or closure of some businesses on the island? How are we going to ensure that there is the multiplier effect of this money that is spent in Tobago is far-reaching? Because one of the things, I studied tourism, that's my background, and we always spoke about economic leakages, which was one of the negatives of the tourism industry, and that's on an international level. One of the challenges facing the Tobago economy presently is that there are far too many economic leakages, and this is across the board, not only in the tourism sector. Because the fact is, not enough, if it is, we look at the fact that the government sector is the highest spender, or in terms of GDP, the Tobago GDP, we look at the biggest bite coming from the government allocation. We cannot have a situation where the economic leakages are so large, meaning very specifically that we cannot look at, say, yes, we have built a road, or we have built a school, or we have bought a chair, but rather, have we bought a chair from a Tobago entrepreneur? Have we built a road using Tobago resources? Have we developed a particular, this agriculture sector, using what is available in Tobago for Tobago? And what we are seeing in the Tobago circumstance right now is a high level of leakages, which needs to be addressed. Because whether we get 2 billion or 4 billion, we cannot have a situation where the majority of it is being spirited away outside of the Tobago economy, because then you are limiting the opportunity for development on the island of Tobago.
Before you go forward, I just want to ask a question, and
Sure.
for clarity for the viewers watching. When you say leakages, are you referring to hiring outside contractors to do work in Tobago? Is that what
it's a combination. It will be a combination. It will
because
be
one
anything.
of the biggest projects in Tobago right now happening is the airport.
Right.
That is an international project that has been given to China Railways by the central government.
So one of the biggest projects in Tobago that was bid on nationally is the airport. Yes. It was won by China Railway, yes. And the fact is, you're seeing a great use of Tobago resources. As a matter of fact, while I was Secretary of Infrastructure, I remember sitting on the negotiating table with NITCO and demanding that there was an increase in Tobago, what was considered for Tobago content, so that there was that agreement that we moved forward on that. When it comes to certain technical projects, I don't know that there are any airport construction companies in Tobago, but when you certainly speak about the development of roads, the construction of houses, and so on, you are definitely looking at where there is, do we have competent Tobago contractors? And the answer has to be yes. And the answer is yes. So we have to be very mindful, and it's not just saying everything is Tobago, because there will be instances, if it is we have to build a marina, for example, as is proposed in the budget. I don't know that there are any marina specialists. However, I remember promoting, and I don't know if the THA has continued with that policy, where we insisted that there were partnerships. So there was a partnership on the Roxborough Fire Station, there was a partnership on the Thompson River Bridge between a contracting company from outside of Tobago and a local contractor, so that capacity was built as well. So just to be clear, I don't expect every single project or every single cent spent by the THA to be spent in Tobago. But what I do expect, as I said, is to begin pulling back on those leakages. Because the fact is, we have a situation in Tobago now where far too much of a high percentage of what is spent by the Tobago House of Assembly is spent on content, whether it's labor, whether it's materials, whatever have you, originating outside of Tobago, and we have to cut that out.
Right, but you have a situation where the Chief Secretary and his administration is justifying a number of those projects being, as you said, quote unquote, spirited away by the fact that they just don't have the type of money that is needed for half of these projects. And so they have, decided to go with the design build finance model. And very few Tobago businesses are capable of, maintaining or sustaining themselves on a model of that nature. But we're going to allow Mr. Williams
before you say that,
I just want
to say, if you are willing to go with that explanation, there's a beautiful piece of real estate I would like to sell you just off of Speyside. It's currently uninhabited, but I have the deed for it and I can sell it to you if you want.
Mr. Williams, when it comes to the, I'm going to let you also give your opinion on the overall budget as well as Tobago's allocation. But, Mr. Devines raised an interesting point. Yeah. So I want us to talk about the design build finance model that this administration has utilized, and the fact that the conversation continues in this space that the reason why a number of contractors from outside might win these projects is because of the fact that a number of Tobago contractors and businesses simply don't have the capacity or the financial backing to sustain these large projects without the capital injection that is needed.
I want to say good night to everyone. Yes. I understand the direction in which you're coming in terms of the capacity of the contractors, but we need to build capacity on the island. And if we need to build capacity on the island, we have to take that set contract, you could have split it up in pieces and let smaller contractors get part of it, and so that they would now build capacity moving ahead. You just don't say this is a large contract and just leave a contractor from outside the space to come and do it. You can take that same thing. I saw that happening at UDCOT split them into pieces, and you get the smaller contractor build capacity by doing that. And that's a good way of doing it. Now, what happening in the space today, we see the Tobago Assembly is rallying for funding, for more money. They have outstanding debts that have to be serviced. Members of the Tobago Division of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, also other contractors on island, and even providers, they definitely need their money. They need funding. Hence the reason why we can't go by the financial institution, because they're not going to accept anything that we give them, because we definitely need the funding. All right. So that was one reason I would say that we need the money. Now, having the money is one thing, but if we're going to get it and if it's going to be spent the way it ought to be spent, that's another thing. And we had to look into that as we go forward. I know with the $2.5 billion that the THA received, 2.3 is for recurrent and development is only 205. I know that 205 for development really cannot do nothing much, right? So then we have to get creative now and find other means of getting development done on the island. And I'll leave that to the technocrat to get creative. But what we want to do as a chamber, we need to monitor what's happening in this space. We need to monitor the direction and how things is actually happening on island, because right now the business community is a bit sluggish. There's nothing much happening for us in the business community. So hence the reason when I see the game changer come in actually, which is the new terminal building, and I did ask for a game changer and someone listens to us, and now we have the game changer. We have a new terminal building coming next year, 25, and that terminal building must be filled with airlift. The amount of passengers estimated to pass through that terminal building, we need airlift. And after airlift, we need somewhere for these people to stay.
Yes.
Our 1-star, 2-star, they're not going to stay in those properties. So we need proper properties. We need some development going forward. So I know 2025 is going to be a game changer for Tobago. There's going to be a lot of excitement in this space. And I want to warn Tobagonians, you all have to be ready for it, as you're going to lose it. If you think we're losing it now, you're going to lose all of it. Because if we don't prepare ourselves for that big game changer coming next year, in terms of development, in terms of capital development, in terms of people getting ready for the tourism industry, farmers, bulking up themselves, fisher food, getting themselves ready for that game changer, we're definitely going to lose it.
All right, and I want to bring Mr. Nelson into the conversation now. You have heard what your colleagues had to say. First, I want to give you the opportunity, if you wish to comment on, the whole design bill finance model that this administration has used to supplement the shortfall in revenue, as well as, input from the central government. And then give us your overall view on the allocation that was given to Tobago this time around. We had Mr. Kwesi Levine starting off very strong, saying that he thinks that the allocation was sufficient. Do you agree?
My good man, when I introduced the leg to my fellow friend. Well, Kwesi, you see the color he's wearing. He can't see, his views cannot be no other than what he expressed. No. The THA had no other alternative but to go on that model, because you had $205 million around project development program, can't do nothing. But I just want to paint a picture to the people of today. I even say I like to call it a fiscal estimate. I don't like to call it a fiscal budget, because you intend to spend a certain amount and you intend to receive. So, but I want to paint this picture to Tobagonians who are listening. The expenditure for this fiscal year is $59 billion. $59 billion is expected to spend. So if you minus the money that the THA is getting is $2.5 billion, which is given to the THA. And then the minister spoke about a $6.78 million under the sixth schedule that the central government will spend. I think
678.
78. Yeah.
678.
Right. Let us round that off. Let us round that off to our next billion. So that is about 3-point-something billion spending in Tobago. So how much that remain from the 59? Almost $59 billion remaining, which is expected to spend in Trinidad. Plus that, we have a private sector in Trinidad, a vibrant private sector in Trinidad, with those big conglomerates as Macalandos. They're ill-treating the people of Tobago and the island of Tobago. This is, as the secretary said, this fiscal wickedness to the people and island of Tobago. And I was listening to the minister, and it seems like the PNM have not get over the tabanka about the licks that they take. Because I mentioned when he reaches Tobago, he said that the people of Tobago would have elected a new administration. 3 years after, you're still toting feelings. And he can say, we have one of the best reef in Tobago called Buku. And he can't say pronounce the word Buku. He said Buku where they're supposed to spell. So you see that these gentlemen, this PNM part, don't have no interest as far as the people of Tobago is concerned. Once they're not in control, and instead they're in control of the THA, they give the self-PNM, Kwesi and them, the same 200,000. They don't care about the island and people of Tobago. They don't care. I was expecting, as the chamber president said, I would have expected for them to mention the money to provide us for the oil spill and burial. Nothing of that is mentioned. Nothing of that is mentioned. The 50 million that was given to the THA, that was the expenditure up to April. The expenditure went past April. What about the payments? You've seen the people, the suppliers and things crying out in Tobago. That is wickedness. They know willfully what they are doing to the institution. The institution called the Tobago House and the people by extension. Especially our election year coming up. So they are weaponizing the THA to make the people of Tobago feel like this present administration is wicked and they do like. That cannot be. And the people of Tobago must open their eyes and see what is happening. It is plain to see. To the
President of the Chamber, Mr. Williams, now we sat and we listened to the Secretary for Finance, Petalan Roberts, and she indicated that now it's more than cutting and contriving. It's going in and basically doing surgery with the little that they have been allocated. How do you think this is going to affect businesses in Tobago, and what can the private sector do to help the THA supplement, that shortfall in the allocation?
Well, coming out from the entire budget, there are some projects that hoping to come on stream. The building of the Marriott Hotel, the proposal for the RFP for the Buko Bay, the land there at Buko Bay. So we're looking for another branded hotel in that space. The Mandarina Grand, they're looking at either to sell or lease. We get to find an operator for it. And we have the marina coming in the space. We know we have to pull away from the THA. The private sector definitely have to get up now and start to work as tedious as we can to do something meaningful on this space. We know that the THA have to do some proper planning now. They have to go back to the drawing table and do some proper planning and look for opportunities and ways of cutting and saving. It's not going to be a nice exercise, but at the end of the day, they have to do it.
Right.
They have no choice.
Okay, Mr. Devines, we heard the Prime Minister even before the budget was read, indicating that, in essence, repeating his sentiment of tightening your belt, and that, tough times are ahead from now until 2027. Do you have any views on this?
Well, before I even go there, I just want to set your record straight. When it comes to the design build finance, okay, it's not a new thing. It has been, and as you share these creative ways, as the Chief Secretary said, but it's not creative in terms of this administration. It was done in my time, it was done before my time, and I'm sure it will be done long after this current administration departs from office, hopefully sooner rather than later. The reality is, the development of Tobago has largely been done and carried out by local, indigenous, very competent contractors. The roundabout at Shervan is not the first roundabout in Tobago, despite the parroting that you're hearing from the current administration. There are three other roundabouts that were built. All of them were built by Tobago contractors. Hundreds of kilometers of roadways, all built by Tobago contractors and who have demonstrated a level of capacity. As a matter of fact, Chanel, I will let you know that when we had to do the relocation of the residents for the construction of the terminal building, which I will get to, which is a big game changer, as Curtis said. We were in a position where the housing stock in Tobago was extremely limited, but the THA, because of the P&M policy, had a large land bank. We were actually able to engage a Tobago contractor to the sum of close to $100 million to develop 2 sets of land. And that was design, build, finance, of course, under the guidance of our technocrats in the division. So to say that Tobago contractors don't have the capacity is inaccurate. What I can say is that if Tobago contractors continue not to be paid, suffered and frozen out, then you can say that they don't have the capacity, because as the chairman, as Curtis mentioned, they can no longer go to the bank. And no matter who, no matter what, no contractor takes $100 million out of their own pockets and build. They go to a funding agency, whether it's a bank or whatever the case might be. So that's the reality of design, build, and finance. So one of the things that I must share, and it's, I really wish that the Secretary of Finance was here this evening, because,
She will be here.
well, hopefully I'm on the panel at the time. But when you look at the development funding that was received, even while I was in office, we will always say it's not enough. But what was done again by prioritizing, by staying focused, we would always hold back from our recurrent spend and have it put into the contingency fund, which we have control over, and use that to support and buttress development spend. It meant that we could not go on lavish travels. We could not spend money on vanity projects. We could not waste time and taxpayers' fund turning certain projects that we have no intention of continuing, but we were extremely focused. And that way, we got to fund a lot of the development that you saw in Tobago, the very same, the Roxborough Administrative Complex and all of the bridges and the resurfacing of the Claude Noel Highway. All of these things were done not from the development funds that we received, because for the resurfacing of the Claude Noel Highway, for example, the allocation I think was $10 million when it cost $27 to $30 million. What we had to do was to cut and contrive, where you cut back on your recurrent spend and you use that to fund the development. So again, I'm giving free advice, or in case the Secretary of Finance forgot, that is exactly how we went. And when you talk about cutting and contriving, the reality is you have not seen, you're seeing attempts by the current P&M administration to try to maintain as close to what they call a balanced budget. We don't want to go into an uncertain future with too large of a deficit budget. Yes, it's a deficit budget, but you're seeing as close to a balance as possible. And tightening your belt and all of that is preparation for the fact that, hey, listen, the subsidies that we enjoy, we have to consider that we may not always enjoy them, because I have not heard any initiatives to remove any new subsidies, so that they're not increased hardships. As a matter of fact, I'm seeing an increase in the minimum wage for public sector employees. I'm seeing a commitment to negotiate with some certain sectors of employees up to 5%. So you are seeing, as a matter of fact, an attempt by the government, despite the pronouncements or the earlier mention of the Prime Minister, to ease hardships of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. The reality is, we saw it recently where there was a challenge, and for the first time, the production of natural gas fell below 1 billion units for the first time in so many years. And when he said 2027, we're going to see the coming on stream of some of the new fields, the Manatee field and so on, that would help to support the expenditure that we are looking at which is around $60 billion. I just want to add very quickly to what Curtis said in terms of airlift and the tourism sector, which we are seeing is being mentioned as very important for the development of Trinidad and Tobago. One, I am extremely happy that the government didn't just throw their hands up in the air and say, well, Sandals isn't coming. We do have this land, the Boko Estate, which they got from one of the Clico, that's one of the Clico assets. And they're not just saying, well, Sandals didn't come, so hard luck for us. Always me. But instead, they're saying, let's still, we didn't acquire the Golden Grove Estate again, but let us move forward with the Boko Estate. Let us get an operator, because the reality is, 65,000 people is not enough to support the private sector, and Curtis, I'm sure, will be well aware of that. We do need an expansion of our population, and of all the definitions of tourism that I'm aware of, one of the best definitions I heard, tourism is the temporary expansion of your population. And if it is we are able to get 3 million persons through our airport, as estimated by the Minister of Finance, or new airport on an annual basis, as Curtis mentioned, we need the airlift, and we also need the hotel room, the quality.
Right. And we're going to come back to tourism as a topic a bit later on, so we don't want to delve too deeply into it. But I'm going to allow Mr. Barry Nelson to give his comment, but before he is able to, he seems like he's itching to respond to what you said. We saw that 56.6 million was allocated to renovating the Magdalena Beach and Golf Resort. But we also saw that the Hilton Trinidad Conference Center was allocated 400 million. So in the comparison between one project being the improvement of the Hilton Conference Center compared to the overall development budget for Tobago of $205 million. What does that say about the idea for development for Tobago when one hotel's upgrades cost 400 million and the entire development budget for the island of Tobago is 205 million? I want to hear from you, Mr. Nelson, and then I will.
That's very leading. I love the question. I love how you structured that question and threw it for Barry. I love that.
And I will love Mr.
that golden platter.
No. I just want
But Mr. Nelson, before we get into that response, hold it close to your chest because we have a clip.
Encourage direct foreign investment and local investment, especially in the tourism sector. First project will be divestment of the Magdalena Hotel. We intend to offer the Magdalena Hotel for sale or lease. The second project is new international hotel development. A request for proposals will be made to develop a new five-star internationally branded resort hotel on the government-owned Baku Estate in Tobago. Baku? This project is expected to be on the scale, Madam Speaker,
Minister.
Speaker, the more you talk to them, the more noise you're making, like children. New international hotel development.
Remember, we have a little ruling on that. Yes? So just withdraw that and continue.
Of course I withdraw. They're adults. I'm starting all over. Yes, Madam
Okay,
Speaker,
sure.
Of course, I said they were.
Okay.
Let me start from the beginning. Divestment of Magdalena Hotel. New international hotel development. There will be a request for proposals to develop a new five-star internationally branded resort hotel on the government-owned Baku Estate in Tobago. This project is expected to be on the scale of the previously proposed Sandals Hotel, and if successful, will bring tremendous economic benefits to the people of Tobago. In Buku. Third, Tobago Marina. A request for proposals will be made to develop a yachting marina in lowlands in Tobago, just southwest of the Pitti-True Lagoon, on lands currently being acquired by the government from the Plantations Estate. This will be a private-public partnership and will involve the following features: docking facilities for at least 50 pleasure craft, both power and sail, up to 18 meters in length. Storage facilities on land for a further 50 pleasure craft. Refueling, washing and repair facilities, marine and boat chandlers, stores and a restaurant. A slipway to transfer a trailered boat into the water. A travel lift and forklifts for lifting boats out of the water and transporting them to the hard stand. And a breakwater and dredged approach channel and basin. The fourth.
Welcome back to our discussion. Before we left off for that clip, we were about to hear from Mr. Barry Nelson on his perspective. Well, he had some responses to give, so we'll allow you to give your rebuttal. And then we were talking about the development allocation for Tobago compared to some of the single item projects being done in Trinidad.
I just want to respond to something that Kwesi said, that he wished the secretary was here so that he could give us some pointers. Those are my goals as far as saving on recurrent. You see, I did public service for 39 years. And what Mr. Kwesi don't understand is that there's an opportune cost when you suppress recurrent expenditure and put it to development. And this is why most of the service providers in their time wasn't getting paid. Public servants wasn't getting their increments and their back pay, and the contract workers wasn't getting their contract, the gratuity and so forth. Teachers was not put at the correct point because they were suppressing. And he don't understand that the recurrent expenditure is the expenditure that keep the economy moving. But they were deliberately suppressing the poor working class, that is the workers and the suppliers, to give their friends contract in the selective friends contract in the development program. You know why the selected contractors. You know who know they are in the development program. They were deliberately doing that, suppressing the recurrent expenditure and channeling the money to the development program to their financiers, their local financiers. I didn't want to call them. All Tobagonians know who they are. So that is the opportunity card. So Kwesi, and this is why this present administration have to come in and even have CPEP and URP workers working for small money. It's this administration come in here and raise the salaries of CPEP and URP workers, put teachers at the correct point, pay them the increment, pay those contract workers that they employ and was ill-treating, outstanding gratuity for 5 and 6 years. It's 5 and 6 years. So don't come with that policy. That is, it sounds nice, but what it's doing to the ordinary person who would have provided goods and services to the THA, and you all suppress them or wasn't paying them. And this administrator have to come in and pay them. Right. Back to the
Development.
Mandalay.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned it, they don't care about Tobago. This PNM central government see Tobago as a frolic. Just on weekends they jump a plane, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, come up, have a good time and go back. They don't see Tobago in the whole construct of Trinidad and Tobago as a playing a part in the development of this country called Trinidad and Tobago. They look at us as a sea and sand. They don't look at us as playing a part and developing a vibrant economy in Tobago. You can't give us $200 and something million and expect that we have infrastructure. Tobago we need to connect all the villages together in order, if we have to develop the ecotourism thing in Tobago. If we decide to do tourism and this 5-star, we have to start to develop our agriculture sector. We have to feed our, we start to have a sustainability thing. Look, for example, when the boat goes down, the cargo boat, what happens? Most of our stocks come from trailer. So we have to start to build this food security. And we need money in order to develop the access road, the various access roads, the agriculture access roads, the connectivity, all of these kind of things we need to do. $205 million cannot do it. Cannot do it.
Right, and so I would have extended the question to Mr. Williams,
Yes.
and we're going to take a break right after your response, give you guys the opportunity to have some coffee, have some water, wet your throat,
I
because
think Barry needs some water.
the discussion is very lively this evening, and we're going to continue to respect each other's perspectives and, you know, keep the discussion going. So, Mr. Williams, I would have, you know, tried to make a comparison regarding some of the single items, simply, you know, that Hilton conference room upgrade, you know, being at 400 million compared to an overall development budget of 205 million. So, you know, from the perspective of the chamber, how do you feel about that?
Well, looking at it from a layman point of view, you're seeing 400 million on one project in Trinidad, and you're seeing 205 million for the whole of Tobago. And then you will tell yourself, no, that definitely, well, at least you could see for yourself, no, that for a country to a project. One other project in Trinidad for like one contractor, he may have $205 million as one of his projects, but you have that's a budget for a division in Tobago, for development, I should say, not for a division. And we know definitely it can't compare. It really can't compare. Definitely. Again, as I mentioned early on, the teacher now in its construct have to use all the mechanism to fund the development. I think Kwesi did mention about using funds from the recurrent to do that, squeeze back or hold back in some of the areas in a recurrent expenditure. Barry said if you do that, you're suppressing the Tobagonians, because when you do squeeze back, it meant that you would have to be cutting from somebody entitlement within the recurrent as you're going forward. So there's a balance between the two conversations going forward. But we know the reality is it is 205. And the THA in its construct have to do something about that. And it meant that they have to go back to the drawing table and do what they need to do. But as I said early on, I was asking the finance minister to send some additional funds to Tobago to treat with some of the debt that the THA incurred. And that's what I was asking. Right, so let's leave the development, leave the recurrent, send this fund directly to treat with debt that the THA, the oil spill and other debts. The oil spill debt need to be treated separately because it's an emergency. It wasn't something planned for. And then we've seen other places where money have been spent. I noticed the teachers spend a lot of money in national security and some other areas, which again, they have to look for this money, and those money coming from recurrent.
Now, as you touched on the debt, I remember in a conversation with the Secretary for Finance, now she's entered the building, so she would be able to express this for herself. But she would have indicated, apart from the debt from outstanding projects, there's a debt that reoccurs every month that no one truly speaks about, which is the debt from overdraft fees, because that the allocations are paid late. So that is an unforeseen expense that comes up all the time that no one truly advocates for, kind of talks about. So I am glad that you would have brought up that and the importance of, the central government considering that as being something separate and apart from all other allocations. Thank you for bringing that to the forefront. Now we're going to take a quick break right here. We're going to be back right after this, giving the gentleman the ability to take a break, and we'll be back. See you soon.
This is how it's gonna go. They better look up and look, 'cause this is your show, and everybody's gonna know. Say it to them once again. They better look up and 'cause this is your show. More, live more.
Coconut's Cafe, the buffet restaurant that specializes in all your tasty local dishes. For breakfast and for lunch. Breakfast includes coconut bake and sada roti, served with chokers, bull joil, and sausages in tomato sauce. Not forgetting beef and cheese pies, shepherd's pie, macaroni pie, and rice in various styles. Meat served in a variety of flavors, garden salads, and pasta salads. All this accompanied by fruit juices, coconut water, your choice of a great combination to appease your taste buds. So call us today to order, as we are here to accommodate your busy schedules or if you are having a cooking day off.
Are you an architect or draftsman looking to upgrade your skills, or a beginner eager to master essential tools? ReCAD Labs has the solution. Our Revit Architecture Fundamental Tobago course is designed to boost your skills and confidence. Running from October 6th to November 17th, this course includes a live session on November 17th for hands-on learning. Learn from experts in our virtual classroom and stay ahead in the world of architecture. Visit recadlabs.com to enroll now and follow us on social media for updates.
Investing in community development, youth programs, sport facilities, technical and vocational education, and trade. Physical infrastructure. The THA intends to promote socio-economic development through modern, safe, and sustainable infrastructure in Tobago. These initiatives aim to enhance safety, accessibility, and economic viability. Environment, climate change, and energy. The THA intends to advance environmental sustainability through the establishment of an environmental, climate change, and energy department focusing on resource management and climate adaptation. Madam Speaker, I anticipate that the strong economic and macroeconomic performance in Trinidad, characterized by sustained GDP growth, high employment levels, and stable low inflation, will contribute to an improved economy in Tobago. Further, I am advised by the Tobago House of Assembly that the Tobago economy is recovering from the significant slowdown caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, and the tourism industry is experiencing renewed interest from both local and international visitors. I'm told that direct international flights to and from Tobago and hotel occupancy rates are on the rise. I will now outline the allocation for Tobago for fiscal year 2025. The THA allocation totals $2.599 billion, of which $2.376 billion is for recurrent expenditure, $205 million is for development program expenditure, $18 million is for the URP, and $9.2 million for CPEP. The total allocation for the Tobago House of Assembly in 2025 represents an increase of $22.756 million over the allocation of $2.576 billion in fiscal year 2024 and represents 4.35% of the national budget.
Welcome back to our post-budget debrief here on Tobago Updates. I am Chanel Felix, and this evening, with my first panel discussion, I have had the privilege of sitting with former Secretary Kwesi Devines, as well as the President for the Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Mr. Curtis Williams, as well as political activist, Mr. Barry Nelson. And, the conversation was heating up before we went off to the break, but Mr. Devines was sure to let me know that, I didn't give him his opportunity to come in and respond to, that last topic in regards to allocations for single projects compared to the overall development budget. And, in the interest of time, we're going to round up the discussion with that increase in the minimum wage for public sector workers. I'm going to allow all members of the panel to comment on that. Mr. Devines, right after you are finished with your rebuttal, I'll allow you to also comment on that 2.5% increase in the minimum wage for public sector workers. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know that what I have is a rebuttal. Clearly, and I do admire Barry at times, but in a different space, I might have quoted from the Minister of Finance and say, well, meet me outside, because I feel like we are here having a very sober discussion, fact-driven, and I don't want us to be swayed too much by emotion, because we are soberly reflecting and being analytical and incisive when we are looking at the budget. And we can't afford to fall into the trap of just getting emotive and talking about wicked and weaponized. We won't get into that tonight. What I don't want us to do as well is get into cherry picking without the right context. And by looking at the Hilton Trinidad versus the Magdalena in Tobago, we are cherry picking in the wrong way and without context, and I'll tell you why. The allocation for the renovation to the Magdalena Grand and the Hilton in Trinidad are expenditures being covered under the capital expenditure of the national purse, not just the Tobago House of Assembly. So, for example, you didn't mention it as we are cherry picking, that the airport development is costing taxpayers close to $900 million. Now, were we to compare the $900 million spent on the Tobago airport to the Piarco airport, that's not the thing that we're going to do.
Let me just interject before we go forward and clarify so that you are well informed in your response. I compared the One Hilton project to the overall Tobago development budget, not to the Magdalena.
And I'm saying, and that's why, hold on, but you did mention the Magdalena in Tobago as well.
I did mention it as a part of one of the tourism-based projects.
And I'm saying you have to look at it in context of what the government is spending on capital expenditure, because then you can say in the same breath, if that's the case, that $900 million is being spent on the airport in Tobago as opposed to the $205 million on the development. You can say the same thing. You can also speak to the money that is going to be spent to develop the marina. We can also speak to the money that is going to be spent to develop the Bucca Estate. So all of those things are capital expenditure project that the central government has said, hey, listen, although it is geographically located in Tobago, we are willing to spend on that from the overall budget. Similarly, when the airport project came on board, remember one of the concerns that was brought to the table is, hey, we need to have adequate access to the airport. And as such, there was a conceptual design done, and we agreed that we have to have an airport bypass through Chauvin. It was agreed as well that the central government at the time was priced at $70 million for a dual carriageway with the same two roundabouts and so on, connecting Chauvin Junction to the new airport terminal. The central government said that's $70 million. We would spend it, Tobago. You don't have to spend it. We went to the table and said, okay, fine. As much as it's a road development project, remember, we have the expertise in Tobago. This current administration took it upon themselves to say, well, we don't want the central government to spend that $70 million from the national pie. We would undertake spending $100 million to get the project done. And we're talking about design, build, finance, and trying to justify the limited funds. We are seeing where $100 million, let me say my proper English, over $100 million is being spent out of the quote-unquote limited Tobago development budget on a project that could have been covered under the central government capital expenditure. So Barry mentioned a nice word that I remember in my sixth form and university economics class. The opportunity cost of spending on that road is that we do not have those development funds anymore to spend on other projects that would have benefited Tobago. Projects that are languishing, like the Charlottesville Community Center and Pavilion, the Goodwood Pavilion, the Backlit Indoor Facility, the fishing facility for the Palatine fisher folk, the shovel-ready Turpin Bend project. All of these projects that are just languishing because we chose instead the opportunity cost again to spend our limited, as we put it, development funds to build a road to nowhere at present, because the road as it is now does not even connect to the airport. It does not even connect to the Storbay local road, because they went ahead hurriedly and did the project ill-advised and technically unsound. So we now have a road to nowhere that probably our grandchildren will be paying for, because we are yet to get a full disclosure on what it costs, the final project cost, because it kept changing. And every time there was a shutdown with the injunction, we saw the contractor still doing work. And we have no idea of the terms, the interest terms of what is going to be paid. So I just wanted to put that. I did mention before, so I wanted to put that on the table when we talk about wickedness and all of that. We're not getting into that. When we look at the minimum wage for public sector employees, I didn't mention earlier that despite the Prime Minister going on record and saying we have to tighten our belts to 2027, we are still seeing a deliberate effort to ease some of the hardship of the lower income, of those on the lower income scale. What I would hope, because I remember when we had raised URP rates as well in 2019, I think it was, is that there was a commensurate increase in other places as well. Because now we're going to have where a supervisor, for example, based on the increase in the lower, because so if you have a janitorial worker, the janitorial worker might have been working for X, the supervisor for X plus 1. Now with the increase, they may end up having to see a similar take-home salary. It means, of course, then everyone going up there may have to be some other increases as well. So I don't expect only the persons who were operating at the minimum wage to benefit, but also very likely their direct supervisors and so on. So I think it's a good move, and I think it's a positive signal that is sent.
All right, I'll allow Mr. Williams to also comment on the minimum wage briefly, as well as Mr. Nelson. Sure.
What I have to say about the minimum wage, now the government moved the goalposts, so they put it at $22.50. It meant that private sector now, if you want 2050 now, your workers now looking at you cross-eyed, right? Because now you know how to be careful, because they would say, well, look, government paying 2250, probably I will leave from private sector to go by government, because government paying more than you. Now, what I see with the minimum wage, and the number looks just 2050 and 2250, but it is more than that. It will cost an employer going forward. We have NIS that we had to pay for. You have the increase in insurance. You have the increase in overtime. And there's some other expenses that led to the number not being just 2050 or 2250 going forward. But I just want the government to be cautious when you move the minimum wage for the government, what you're telling the private sector. Right? And then, I mean, some of us haven't recovered from the 2050 yet, and now we're going to 2250. So it meant that we now have to look at opportunities. Now, so it meant that, and they indicated security, MTS and all that. So what about the private security now? It meant that the government now would have to put out more money for contracted security. So you don't want to just raise the minimum wage for your sector and leave us out of it, because now we're going to contract us now to do the same job that you just waived the minimum wage for. So that meant you got to be paying more for the service. So I hope they take that into consideration going forward.
All right, and Mr. Nelson will allow you to
No,
give
that's
your
one all right.
compliment.
Where Chrissy spoke about the central government was building the road. You see, and this is the problem that I have. We have an institution here called the Tobago House of Assembly. And Chrissy was talking about building capacity and so forth. under the responsibilities of the THA, the THA is responsible for building. Why can't the central government give the THA in order to build the road? He spoke earlier about we have contractors, Tobago contractors here. Well, okay. If you are having to give the Tobago House of Assembly the $70 billion and let the institution called the Tobago House of Assembly, our government here, build the road. Anything wrong with that? So we cannot build capacity over here. We cannot do anything. So Tobagonians cannot do anything for themselves. We have to always depend on the central government to say, okay, that they're building this road here. No, those times are past. You know, you have so much time, they build billboard and say they're going to duel the Claude Noel Highway. Many times they put up that just before election, or we have 2-lane traffic. What become of that? What become of the resurfacing of the other part of the Claude Noel Highway? They stop at Wilson Road. Why not continue? Why not continue? So this thing about they will say that no because the THA went ahead and built the road that they had promised. It's only promises you get from the PNM. Only promises you get from the PNM. Only promises. And those projects that he mentioned here concerning the Buku thing, those are not for this financial year. It's only about election coming, so they're waving goodies in front the people of Tobago. No, we could reach through the PNM. I'm 59 years old. I understand. I could reach through them. And Tobagonians by now have reached through them. It's only promises and promises. They told us in 2022 to wait until 2025 things will be better. No, they push it back now to 2027. And when 2020 to vote them in, and when 2027 come, when election come next year, you vote them in, they tell you to wait until 2030. That is what the PNM is.
Understood.
Promises, never more.
All right. Well, guys, we have to take a break right here, and we'll be back with much more discussion. See you soon.
Tobago Glass Supplies has been a leading name for over 37 years in the glass and aluminum market in Tobago. We provide an extensive range of high-quality, innovative aluminum and glass products for commercial and residential use. Competitive prices with superior and professional services by committed employees who are guided by rigid quality standards. Tobago Glass Supplies specializes in the manufacture and installation of glass and aluminum products that are essential to today's homeowners and the business environment. We are engaged in marketing, sales, and installation of a variety of products. These ranges from windows and doors to necessities such as mirrors for homes and vehicles, designed and manufactured in-house or imported.
We party till we drop down there with a lot of pretty girls down there, down in Tobago.
Dream 2024, the Black Onyx. Tobago, are you ready? Introducing for the first time on the Dream stage, the King of Steam himself, Young Breda, alongside DJ Hottie.
Yo, it's all about the 5th of October in Tobago Show Park. It's all about Dream. Shout out to Mighty Crush, Young Breda. DJ Hottie. We're gonna be there live and alive. You're gonna make it Stevie. Oh, everybody, brother, come on. Mad enough. Who does that?
Dream 2024. It's happening Saturday, October 5th at Shore Park Complex, Tobago from 11:30 p.m. to 8 a.m. Get ready to live the dream.
dollars run down my head. They say too much, one thing to kill you, so what everybody kinda dead. Don't knock it until you try it. Rum sweet, no.
Evening and welcome back to the Tobago Update post-budget debrief / review. Now, we started off with some, excellent discussion, and we continue for the next half of the discussion with 2 additional guests who are joining us on set. We have on my far right, Councillor Petal Ann Roberts, who is also the Secretary for Finance, Trade and the Economy. Thank you so much for joining us. We know that you have had a long day. We saw you this morning and you're back again tonight. And to her left, we have economist Barry Jofield. And thank you guys for joining the discussion. We know you were paying attention to some of, the discourse that took place before. We're not going to repeat the questions, but we still are going to give you the privilege to answer some of those, hot topics that came before. And one of them, being your overall view on the allocation for Tobago. And we're going to start off particularly with the Secretary for Finance. Now, we know that if you're just joining us, Tobago's allocation for the 2020-25 budget was 2.59 billion, and it's being marketed as an increase of 22.75 million, which is 4.35 of the national budget. The reason why I said marketed as an increase is because we saw in the post-media briefing from this administration where they indicated that although it was an overall increase, it was a decrease in the development budget. So we're going to hear and get the clarification from the Secretary. Welcome.
Good night to the panel. Good night to our moderator. And good night to Tobago. So it was not just an increase or a decrease in the development, but on overall, it was a decrease. So if I could break down the numbers for fiscal 2024, which ends on midnight tonight, the THA was allocated 2.298 originally. Then at the midterm, we got 50 million in addition for the oil spill, and that forms part of the appropriation. And then the 260. So that brings us to an overall 2.608 billion. And I'm not comparing that with the 18 million. I think when you say 2.599, it includes the URP. Let's discount that for now. Let's look at the THA's allocation of recurrent and development program. For fiscal 2025, the recurrent and development program totals 2.581. The 18 million is static, so there is no reason to include that or exclude that. That doesn't include that. There was no increase, but there was an increase from a decrease from fiscal 2024 to fiscal 2025 budget that was read today. And the decrease was $27 million.
We will hear from our economist on the panel, Mr. Barry Jofield.
Good night to Tobago. Good night to Trinidad and Tobago. before I start, I just kind of want to, alert us to the fact that there's something called the natural resource curse. And I think it has been with us from independence to now. It continues. I was reading the newspapers where the Prime Minister was talking about the economy getting better by 2007. While I was outside, I heard it was Stuart Young pinning our hopes again on oil and gas. We continue to pin our hopes on oil and gas. And that's the essence of what we call the natural resource curse. And once we continue along that line, we will get nowhere in Trinidad, neither will we get anywhere in Tobago. Because Tobago is just a transfer subsidy economy.
Mm-hmm.
We get transfers from Trinidad, and so we are dependent on what goes on in Trinidad to exist, as the case may be. And I think we need to get out of that mode for Tobago to develop. Tobago cannot develop waiting on a percentage from Trinidad. Whatever percentage that is. I wouldn't quibble if it's 6 or 10. I don't think it would develop Tobago in the way Tobago is supposed to develop. If you are 10%, I don't think so. It'd probably take you, how many years to do that at 10% even? And what is 10% of 1,000? It's 100. But if the figure goes down to 100, 10% of 100 is $10. And it makes no sense. So for me, it's about how we expand this economy in Tobago without the dependence on Trinidad. And that's where I think the discussion ought to be, rather than the numbers game. For me, I think there's a lot more that we can do outside of the current construct of Trinidad and Tobago that Tobago can do on its own. So I just give you one quick example before I close. I've told you the idea about housing development in Tobago. And for me, housing development in Tobago is a good prospect for moving the Tobago economy forward. And I don't see that you need money from Trinidad to do it. The THA has the lands, we have the banks, we have the credit unions that have resources. Well, why not form some small company in Tobago that treats with developing the housing stock in Tobago? I think it's a bankable proposition, and it's a proposition that would create jobs, sustainable jobs for a long period of time. And you don't have to go to Trinidad to do that. You don't have to ask for money from Trinidad to do that. And there are a number of other things that you can do that does not require you to go to Trinidad to develop Tobago. So that's my contribution.
All right. And, in the interest of time, we have a number of topics that we want to delve into. But one of those is, we spoke a lot previously on tourism and some of the tourism projects that were, discussed by the minister. He talked about Caribbean Airlines, be given approval to acquire more aircraft. But we haven't heard about an increase in flights to Tobago, which is something that, a number of persons have suggested has truly stymied Tobago's tourism economy. The man who studied tourism himself, Mr. Kwesi Devines, will allow you to comment on this. And what's your perspective on Caribbean Airlines increasing their airlift to a number of different countries within the region, but right here in Tobago, our last flight is, I think it's at 10:40.
I think it's a double-edged sword, naturally. Pre-COVID, of course, we did have those 2 red-eye flights that had some measure of success. Obviously, it also meant less overnighting in Trinidad for those who had connections. One of the challenges with operating Caribbean Airlines is I see a latent fear almost, because the airline industry is an unforgiving industry. And I see a fear of Caribbean Airlines ending up like in the same position that Liat did. Liat overextended itself, running very frequent flights on as many routes as possible, which became unsustainable over time, even with government intervention and subsidies. And one of the challenges between Trinidad and Tobago, of course, is the it's more utility, as $600 cannot really pay for the flight between Trinidad and Tobago, especially if you're calling on Caribbean Airlines to be profitable. And I think there has to be some reimagining of how we deal with the domestic, and that's been something that has been said before. Because although there is some level of a subsidy that still remains, the cost of $600 for a 20-minute flight, when in fact from Trinidad to Grenada, Trinidad to St. Vincent, is a similar length flight for 3 or 4 times the price. If you are looking at a profitable enterprise, then of course you look at those routes. They're also looking to snap up any opportunities that there are across the region. So in terms of Caribbean Airlines and their mandate to be profitable, I'm not going to get into that. I think with regards to Tobago, especially with the securing additional aircraft, I think one of the things that we definitely need to advocate for is the return of those flights. We did hear the Minister of Work speak about the fact that even operating the sea bridge is extremely expensive. And I don't know if you recall, Chanel, when people were buying boat tickets and flying on the plane, and the Minister of Infrastructure did say that it was still cheaper to operate based on the fuel costs that they were experiencing. The reality remains that the challenge is that most times the Caribbean Airlines does not have a full load factor going both directions at any one time. It does not always maintain. And so we cannot perceive Tobago, the domestic air bridge, as one that is just like everywhere else. So I think some work can be done to improve the airlift between Trinidad and Tobago, and the additional aircraft then would mean that Caribbean Airlines is not as hard pressed with their limited resources to use these planes that we have to bring in the extra finances, but now with additional planes, we can service Tobago the way that we want without the thinking too much about the opportunity cost of what we could have made with this flight, and the same flight, same pilot, same crew, same aircraft flying to another destination.
Understood. And we have Senator Lawrence Hislop joining us very soon, so hopefully he talks about what they have been doing to advocate for that. But we heard in the post-media briefing from the Secretary for Finance indicating that this budget allocation was fiscal wickedness in high places. Now, from your discussion, it seems as though this administration is of the opinion that this budget was made to stifle this administration leading up to the next general and THA election. Talk to us about that.
Yes, so I say that without any apology, because the budget numbers presented in June were representative of a percentage share. And I heard Barry talk about percentage, and I agree with you. This percentage of a big thing, a small thing, is really nothing for us. It wouldn't take us anywhere. However, that is where we are at right now. But the 5.8%, and this morning I advocated for 5%, it represents the percentage share, the per capita share of Tobago's population to the national population. That is what was predicated on. And the 5.8 really represented that. It is fair, it is just, and anything below 5% is wickedness, particularly in the development program. The recurrent is where we spend, and it is what it is. It is recurrent. It's expenditure that is recurring. It continues every year. But the development is where we want to advance Tobago. And we are not able to advance anything in Tobago with a budget of $205 million. Last year was $260. That ends the fiscal year that ends today is $260 million. We are not able to advance anything. As a matter of fact, we can't even sign major contracts with an allocation of $500,000.
Right. And I want to go to our economists on the panel. Mr. Jofield, do you think it was irresponsible of this administration to propose a budget of 5.8, knowing that they usually would get the lower end of the spectrum, which is the 4.3. Well, now we see that, well, yeah, this.
I want to comment a little bit on the Caribbean Airlines story, but I'll respond to you directly. It's a misnomer that there's some wickedness going on, in my mind. If you look from administration to administration, they have done the very same thing. 4.03%. And that has been across the board. So it's either has to be UNC wicked, PNM wicked, everybody wicked to Tobago, if that is the way you would want to use the logic. And the point I'm making is, because it's a transfer, Tobago is a transfer economy. Maybe if I was the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, I'd probably give you 4.03% too. Because for me, there are things that you need to do in Trinidad just as well. And I'm being facetious here. I'm saying that the Minister of Education said she didn't get enough money. The Minister of Works in Trinidad will complain he did not get enough money. Everybody will complain that they did not get enough money to do what they want to do. And therefore, I mean, I'll probably give you the 4.03%, which is what is legally allowable. And they have all been doing that. So it says to me, we have to do something different, because unless nobody's changing the formula, they are doing the same thing. So it's only you probably go to DRC, move it from 4.03 to 6.9, and then they will give you just 6.9. We can't develop that way. And you know, I take a little umbrage to the fact that that is where we are. I am saying there are things that we can do now. I keep repeating. We have a place called Studley Park Quarries. I value Studley Park Quarries. Sell the shares to Tobagonians. Let them invest. Let them buy shares in Studley Park. THA takes the money from the sale of Studley Park, invest into a marina or something of the sort. You don't need to wait on Trinidad to do that. You can do these things for yourself. The Manta Lodge is there. You could do the same thing. I mean, there are things that we can do now, and we need to address those things, do them now so that we can develop rather than wait on Trinidad. And quickly, I just want to mention this Caribbean Airlines story. Barbados does not have an airline. There's no Barbados airline, but tourists go to Barbados in droves. Jamaica sold its airlines to Caribbean Airlines. They do not have an airline. Tourists go to Jamaica in droves. I could go on and on. Liat collapsed. Antigua, Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, all of them, tourists still go there. They're going to find a way to go there. The point I am making is, there's a construct about, and I agree with Chrissy, there's a construct about, if I was the CEO of Carlisle, I would fly the plane to Tobago, because if I am being judged on performance, and I'm going to fly every time, from the time somebody goes on the plane, you're sure you're making a loss. It's a losing concern. I mean, there are things we can advance, and I would suggest, why does an international traveler pay $400 to come to Tobago? Why are we subsidizing international travel to Tobago? Let the international traveler pay the rate. If they're doing that, going to Guinea, going to Jamaica, going elsewhere, let them pay the rate. Public officers, let them pay the rate. The state pay Caribbean Airlines to do that, and then you have enough money to warrant Caribbean Airlines saying, I will fly to Tobago because I am seeing where maybe half the flight is international, some is there, etc. as the case may be.
But Mr. Jofield, I wanna ask this question.
Sure.
Does anybody ask about the profitability of PTSC? Nobody does that, because we see that as a necessary means of transportation for the public. So how is the inter-island transportation between Trinidad and Tobago not a necessary means of of a public service? You understand? And I think that we need to shift the perception of how we look at profitability for social, services. Nobody looks at how profitable HTC is. We just see it as being a necessary social, service to help advance the country and the economy and, the social well-being of the people of the country. So when we talk about the Caribbean airline situation and we use that, excuse, I would say, in my own personal perspective, of it not being profitable, does it do justice to the relationship between the island when persons are not traveling to Trinidad necessarily for leisure, but it's necessary when it comes to business and health? If we had all of these services in Tobago already, then maybe the argument would have been a viable one. But when we have people needing to go to Trinidad, just as someone in Scrum Point needs to get to Charlottesville, can we use that argument of Caribbean Airlines not being profitable? But Mr. Kwesi Devines suggested that he would have schooled the Secretary for Finance when she got here on how to cut and contrive. So I will give him the ability to make his recommendations now that she's here.
Well, I don't know that he wanted to cut off Barry because he was making an important point on airlift. Again, I'm not necessarily here for a political platform. We can meet me outside and we can have that discussion. But I think Barry mentioned something that we can't skirt around. And as much as you say that it's a utilitarian, you made the argument that it's utilitarian for those, I guess the older persons will remember, I guess, Barry Tobago Air Services TAS, when there was a time where the Tobago operation was almost pulled away from Caribbean Airlines, which again is I should say not even Caribbean Airlines, was called BW back then, and even at one time it was Air Caribbean. The fact is that the domestic air bridge, as it is now, as long as it forms part of the greater entity, Caribbean Airlines, as a whole company, they are looking for profitability and sustainable financial sustainability, and we can't just sweep it under the rug. It's a reality that we have to face with, and that's why I made mention that with the additional aircraft, there may be less pressure to allocate the resources or think about the opportunity cost of allocating resources to more profitable routes. And just to make mention, Mary made a very important point, international airlift. Now, I remember when Mr. Wilson was the Secretary of Tourism, God rest his soul, one of the early approaches to attracting airlift to Tobago was what was called a seat guarantee, meaning that the airlines were given an assurance of a load factor of 30 or 40%. And it meant that if it is the airline was unable to sell those, then the THA would have to pay for the additional tickets. It was hedged, of course, against a particular oil price and all of that, so they could know the ticket price. We moved away from that arrangement to what we call marketing agreements. So whenever we had BA, Virgin, all of these airlines coming to Tobago, it was because there was a marketing arrangement and these airlines were paid to come to Tobago. One of the thought processes behind getting the new airport terminal standards at the time was that, hey, the airlines are saying we need the front of the plane full because the front of the plane is where airlines make their money. When we were doing the route sharing with St. Lucia and Barbados, if you traveled from the UK to Tobago, everybody will get off the plane in St. Lucia or Barbados. And it is because we did not have the quality, and you still do not have the quality of rooms to attract people in droves, as Barry was speaking about. And that's why it was so important, one, to get the Sanders brand a 5-star resort, and two, if it is we have first class or business class travelers, we need to have the facilities to accommodate them, and that's why this new airport terminal was so important. So we need to get, and that's why I'm happy that it wasn't a throwing hands up in the air approach with Sanders and the Boku estate. We have to get, besides Marriott, we have to be able to increase, as I said before, the best definition of tourism I've heard of all of the definitions was the temporary increase of the population. We have to find a way to increase tourism numbers, and the fact is, as much as we speak great about the Castara model, which people do want to visit Castara, not everyone wants to come and stay in a rustic type space. And we need a big bump to get the 3 million passengers or 5 million passengers a year. We need to have the properties that have the capacity to do so. So we need to have 100-room resorts and so on at 5-star ratings, which would then give a bump to your agriculture sector. When Sanders was coming, I remember there was a gentleman who spoke to me about building a toilet paper factory, and those are the knock-on effects from a deliberate plan to develop the tourism sector, and that's why it was really ill-advised to speak down the Sandals development. My friends in St. Vincent now, they laugh, they call and laugh when JetBlue announced they were coming. They say, well, thanks to Tobago, we have JetBlue coming now. I can fly to meet my family in the US a lot easier. And when they there were some other agricultural developments, thanks to Tobago and thanks to Tobago, because they are seeing what Tobago turned down a golden opportunity and they took advantage of it, similar to what Barry was saying. And we need to now say very deliberately, let's say, we would love to have 2 4- or 5-star resorts that are internationally recognized to support the airport project, so that we can get the international airlift. We don't only want domestic, we also want international. With international airlift, it means that we have greater foreign exchange reserve, and for all you know, there might be an increase in the subsidy on the domestic air bridge, and we won't even have to have the conversation that we have now.
Right. Because of time, we have to move on. But I want to hear from the Secretary Roberts. You indicated that, moving around funds, cutting and contriving, the usual game of Monopoly, is what has to be implemented again, this time around. I mean, I understand that you guys still have to go back to the drawing board and figure out, but are there any immediate things that come to mind where items that were suggested will definitely have to cut, and the expectations of Tobagonians have to be managed where these particular projects are concerned?
Well, I wouldn't want to speak to that as unilaterally as Secretary of Finance. That discussion has to be with the executive. I cannot say any project that is off the table just yet. I'm yet to see the actual allocations for each line item, each project. And then we can, I could come back again and discuss the priorities of the Assembly. But at this time, I could imagine how $205 million was spread thinly across all these projects. There are about 406 active projects in the development program. But, we don't advance all of them. We don't do all of them. The government, the central government, they are the ones that allocate the funding across all these line items. So until we look at each project, each allocation, and we look at, the strategic selectivity model of prioritizing, then we'll be able to determine, which projects would be our priorities.
All right. We're going to take a quick break right here, and we'll be back right after this. See you soon, guys.
This is how it's gonna go. They better look up below, 'cause this is your show, and everybody's gonna know. Say it to them once again. They better look up below. This is your show, and everybody's gonna know. That's how it's gonna go. They better look up below, 'cause this is your show.
Cafe, the buffet restaurant that specializes in all your tasty local dishes. For breakfast and for lunch. Breakfast includes coconut bake and sada roti, served with chokers, bull joil, and sausages in tomato sauce. Not forgetting beef and cheese pies, shepherd's pie, macaroni pie, and rice in various styles. Meat served in a variety of flavors, garden salads, and pasta salads. All this accompanied by fruit juices, coconut water, your choice of a great combination to appease your taste buds. So call us today to order, as we are here to accommodate your busy schedules or if you are having a cooking day off.
Good evening and welcome back to Tobago Updates, where we are having the post-budget review. Now, before we left off for the break, we were having a number of, vibrant discussions. But now we have joining us the Honorable Senator Lawrence Hislop. Good evening and welcome to the panel.
Good evening, Janelle. Good evening, Tobago. Good evening to my fellow panelists. It's good to be here.
No problem. Now, we were talking about the fact that cutting and contriving is necessary for the allocation that was given to Tobago. Now, all of our panelists had the opportunity to state their opinion on whether or not they felt that 2.599 billion allocation to Tobago was sufficient. So I'll allow you as well to, give your opinions on that.
So, there's always that question comes up every budget cycle, whether the allocation to Tobago is enough. And I heard, I said something to someone today that Tobago finds itself in a unique position that the THA may be the only government entity of that size that publicize its request before the national budget is read. Because I believe every ministry has to go through the same sort of procedure where they look at what plans and projections they have for the ministry and they make a request to the Ministry of Finance. But we never hear what is the actual request from, let's say, from the Ministry of Education, what's the actual request from Ministry of Public Admin or from any ministry. What we hear is what they receive as the allocation. And more often than not, when these ministries receive their allocations, I don't want to use the word make do, but they make best use of the allocation that is provided for them. And I heard the economist say earlier, as I was coming to the studio, that it's about, to me, and I put it in my own words, it's really about your priorities. It's really about, okay, you've requested XYZ to run the island for the year, but where are your priorities? Where are your priorities? We're saying that 2.599 billion is not enough. But then Tobago is also the only unique entity in the government construct that has the ability to move around the entire allocation. It's not like a ministry that says that has to go back to the Minister of Finance to get approval to put the money somewhere else. Tobago gets its allocation and Tobago can say, well, we're going to cut back on recurrent, we're going to cut back on this, and we are going to put XYZ towards development. The comment was also made that all administrations in the past would have gotten around the same 4 point whatever of the budget, 4.3, 4.03, 4.5. So all administrations face the same scenario. But it is, and let's go back. If Mr. London always used a statement for every budget, and Tobagonians at some point in time used to beat him for it. We will manage. And
oh, you're not uncomfortable.
Interesting. I'm not uncomfortable. Interestingly, that with the 4.3 and 4.5 and 4 point how much Mr. London got, we were still able to have significant rollout on this island, whether it be infrastructural projects, whether it be human capital development, because you have so many Tobagonians who, over the years, would have benefited from educational grants, scholarships. All of these things were done with similar percentage allocations. And the question I have to ask is, where is the priority? Where's the policy? Where's the policy direction of the administration in Tobago? It's unfortunate that our newly minted secretary has come in at a point where the administration is almost at the end of its first term in office. But where was the policy direction of this administration from the start? Because if you don't have a policy direction that's clearly articulated and clearly put out there for the population to digest, then when you receive your allocation, if you don't have a plan to spend the money, then you're going to run into problems.
Right, and I remember, during some earlier discourse on the oil spill, you would have, I thought you said that the 50 million was enough, but then you came and you clarified that more money would be given to supplement that 50 million. Can you give us an update?
No. What I said, and the Hansard could bear me out on my presentation in the Senate, that the $50 million was not enough to cover all of the damages and all of the payouts and all of the costs that would have been incurred by the THA. But it is a start. Yeah?
So where's the finish?
Where is the finish? But you can't ask me where is the finish.
I remember clearly you coming on Tobago Updates and clarifying.
Right, but I am sure that the Minister of Energy has clearly shared with the population that negotiations were in place for funding to cover damages that were incurred by Tobago and by Trinidad and Tobago by extension. Because we also have to remember that outside of what was incurred in Tobago for your vendors or your service providers, who your fishermen and these guys who are complaining even today, that there was other significant cost that was borne by central government. I said to somebody one day, I said, there's a vessel parked up in the port that was just parked there waiting to receive the oil. But somebody had to pay for that. And that cost was being borne by the Ministry of Energy. That cost wasn't being borne by the THA.
Okay. And so for clarity, for me, I remember you saying that more money was going to come. I'm not sure if you were not in a position to make a statement like that, and you made that statement.
You are sure that is a statement I made?
I know, and I can pull the record.
Well, you can pull the record.
Yeah,
you can pull the record.
You first, I thought that you said that 50 million was enough, and I remember you coming on Tobago Updates and clarifying in your statement that it wasn't necessarily enough, but more money.
Enough. That is what I said.
More money would be forthcoming.
I said the 50 million was not enough, and I also made a reference to what the Minister of Energy said, that they would have gone to the international agency to seek funding to cover.
But do you think that
expenses.
Yourself and your colleagues from Tobago in the parliament are doing enough to advocate for Tobago to get what was requested from the oil spill fund?
What was requested? From which oil spill fund we speaking of?
All right. I will pull my notes for you, but I don't want us to stall the discussion on this because we know that the Minister for Energy went to New York.
Went to the UK.
Went to the UK,
where the entity is located.
Right, and they went and they advocated for that funding for Tobago, for the oil spill. And I have my notes with the number, I think it was around 300. I honestly cannot remember off the top of my head, but the secretary might even be in a better place than me to speak on it. But while I give her the ability to respond, I will pull my notes for you. All right? So I will go ahead and give the secretary the ability to respond.
Before we go to the oil spill, I want to make it clear to the Senator and to Tobago that you can't compare a ministry's allocation or whatever a ministry receives in terms of an allocation and the Tobago House of Assembly. The Tobago House of Assembly, it's its own body corporate, has its own legal framework, and the DRC raised some issues in terms of the upper limit of 6.9% because of some considerations. Tobago's physical separation from Trinidad is one of them. Another one of them is the multiplier effect, the absence of that. If the government takes a loan, it doesn't necessarily mean that Tobago automatically gets a percentage of that loan. And that is the multiplier effect. We don't necessarily get all the benefits derived when the government goes into any financial arrangement. That is another consideration. We have restricted opportunities for employment and career opportunities in Tobago than in Trinidad. So to say that the ministries don't have an opportunity to come publicly and lay their budget, you just can't make those comparisons. Right?
Well, the only comparison I was making is that every entity within the government's construct has to go through the same process of factoring what their priorities are and presenting what they would like to get from the Minister of Finance. That's the only comparison I was making. I could never compare what happens in Tobago with what happens in the ministry.
Correct.
All I'm saying is that each entity has to sit down and decide what their priorities are and present those priorities to the Minister of Finance. And the Minister of Finance then allocates based on estimates of income. Based on estimates of income and what the country... Now we have an economist here. I'm not an economist, but I'm following from a basic standpoint.
You know, this reminds me of the adage, if you make yourself grass, horse will eat you.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are behaving as though we are a ministry, or we are behaving as though we are a transfer subsidy
entity,
mm-hmm. we're gonna be treated that way. And the point I'm making is this: for me, what I would like to see the Secretary of Finance do. Okay, you want to develop a marina, you do a prospectus for it, you send it down to the government, say, okay, these are the streams of income that will come from the marina. Let us float a bond to have this marina built. This will be the stream of incomes that will come. It will be able to pay for itself over a period of time, increase the public debt by XYZ. That will allow us to do it, and we'll be able to pay. You do that for a cargo port or whatever else you think you might need to do. That should be the argument about development funding in my mind. Presenting an investment option to the government that says this thing is a investable opportunity that would reap benefits down the road, and you can see the benefits it would reap, and we will be able to repay by launching a bond to do that. And I'm saying we need to be creative about what we do in terms of our request for development funding. It just can't be business as usual. I want to 5 million for a road or something of the sort. It has to be innovative. We have to go outside just being a ministry or just being some entity that applies for funding and you either get increase or decrease depending on... that's not how we ought to be functioning in Tobago.
Yeah, and I love the direction. And as I said, I was listening on the way up, and I love the direction that Mr. Nelson, right, is taking.
No, Mr. Jofi.
Mr. Jofi, sorry, Nelson right before. Yeah, sorry. Right. Mr. Jofi, my apologies. And I like that direction. I like that conversation. I heard the conversation about the quarry and the direction that we could go along those lines. And I fully agree that that is the kind of conversation that we should be having in Tobago, and not necessarily this conversation about, well, we want 5.8% of the budget, and if we don't get 5.8% of the budget, then central government is wicked. Dr. Rowley don't like Tobagonians. And to me, that conversation gets us nowhere, because the reality is we've operated in the transfer subsidy kind of environment for all these years, and even in that environment, there has been a level of development. Now we need to take the conversation from here, from our community centers and our health centers, and that to another level. And I think this is where this is where Mr. Jofil is taking the conversation.
Well, I would like for the secretary to clarify, because I cannot remember off the top of my head, what was the request for the development expenditure this year?
The request for development, $1 billion.
Right. But when we look at the equity in the relationship between Trinidad and Tobago, can we truly say that this is a fair and equitable relationship when someone says that I need $1 billion and out of that they get $205 million?
But you see, that comes back to the same conversation Mr. Jofil is having. We're taking it, and as I'm saying, I fully agree with the direction he's going, because we're taking it from a very basic level of development. When the conversation needs to go beyond that, needs to go, this is what I am bringing to the table. So, okay, fine. We're saying that we asked for 1 billion for development, right? We asked for, what was it asked for last fiscal, Madam Secretary?
What was it asked?
They asked for the development?
Around the same.
Around the same. And then we've taken that development money, whatever percentage we got, we didn't get the full amount, but we took that. And what have we done with it? What have we done with what we got? So, okay, we didn't get the 1 billion, but what did we do with how much ever it was? I can't remember the figure. The secretary can't remember the figure. What did we do with it in Tobago within the fiscal 23 to 24 that justifies the spend?
You want me to identify what we have done with $260 million?
Sure.
Significantly?
Why do you think I was responding? No, listen. The government of Trinidad and Tobago is looking for operator to assist them with operating the Port of Spain. Now, okay, you say to the government of Trinidad and Tobago, look, I will quibble with development funding because you probably say you don't have the money. Give me the 2 vessels, okay? Give Tobago the 2 vessels as part of our development funding for 2024. You take the vessel, you run it down to St. Lucia, Cropover, Vinida, Carnival, whatever. People will pay going rate to travel on the boat, put Marshall Montano on the boat or something like that, and they have fun going wherever and they pay. And during the week, you run it normally as you would between Trinidad and Tobago. You do the same thing for your cargo boat. I'm just saying, we have to think creatively about what we want to ask for in the context of our developmental budget. Simple thing like CPEP. I mean, the cocoa industry, the chocolate industry is an industry that is begging to. You can't find enough cocoa, you can't get enough chocolate. You take CPEP, apply them to the estates that you have wherever, and let them, get into cocoa, honey production, as the case may be. Take your same recurrent expenditure and place it to do developmental stuff and generate income.
Right, but we heard before on the previous panel where Mr. Barry Nelson would have explained the repercussions of removing monies from recurrent into development and how it would impact, some of the essential things that, need to be done. That's one way to...
I'm not saying remove it, I'm not saying remove it at all.
You said
I'm saying you take the same... CPEP is allocated from recurrent. But take the same CPEP workers and have them work in the agricultural estates where they can do productive work that would allow them to...
Go ahead.
That's all right. So you take the same CPEP workers and put them into a developmental space that would allow them to generate income. So I'm not saying you're removing the money from recurrent. I'm just saying you're making better use of your recurrent expenditure.
Understood. I like that idea.
Because you see, the thing about it, how I see it, and I asked the secretary what specifically they would have done in development to the 260 significant. But we've had a situation in the last 3 years where undoubtedly this administration has gotten more funding year on year than previous administrations. And we've committed, and people may say we beaten up on our road, but we've committed $70 million on a road that under discussion and the willingness by central government to build, that monies could have been put into something that could have been more profitable for the island. And I'm not saying that the road isn't profitable, but I'm just saying that if you got a commitment from central government that part of the airport project, they'll build that, then why would you commit 70 million of your development budget, of your development allocation? Why would you commit 70 million to do that when you could have taken that 70 million and you could have put it in another direction that could have, in addition to the road, you got the road, you don't have to pay for the road. But you take that 70 million and you put it elsewhere. And so for me, what I have been seeing, and it's not just me, not just Lawrence Isler, but what I have been seeing is that there is a significant problem with the administration in terms of its policy direction. Where are we going? Where's the island going? We talk about manifestos and so on, and whether manifestos make sense when you're in your election campaign, but your manifesto gives to the population a clear direction of where you, as the party that's seeking to govern, would want to go.
Right. And I want to ask our economist on the panel, Mr. Joe Field, do you think that by asking for $1 billion for development funding, that Tobago is asking for too much?
It all depends. And just break it down for you simply. If your son or daughter was supposed to come to you and say, look, I want $20,000, you might say, well, what do you want to do with $20,000? But if they could explain to you, look, Mom, if you give me 20,000, I'd probably, I think about going to Curacao, buy some shoes. I have good taste in shoes. And I will, $20,000 will generate 40,000. I'll be able to give you every month back 5,000. You might be willing to do that. You probably go to the bank, take a loan and give it to him because you realize, okay, they have some plan that this money that you're going to give them, which you would not normally would have given them, because you might probably give them, let's say, 100 a day or whatever to go to school. But you might now be willing to risk 20,000 on a bankable project if you recognize that there is some thought going into it. And this is what I'm saying. What we need to do for I don't know what the request for development funding looks like, but I'm saying we need to package it differently. So if we want a marina, we package this thing in a way that says, we want you to float a bond to give us this marina. Or we want you to float a bond to do port development, because we want to develop the port. Think that we could have cargo moving through Tobago, going towards the rest of the Caribbean and so on. We want a cargo port to do that. And you can show the streams of income that would come from that, okay? When I'm hearing stories about the fishing vessel that they call Capital of Paradise, and if the stories bear true, I'm saying, why not say you want 4 more vessels like the Capital of Paradise with the same kind of income flows and streams? Want to borrow money to buy 4 more of those that would bring in more fish. You could develop your fishing industry further, and so on and so on. The point is, I don't know what it looks like in terms of the packaging of your request for development funding, but to me, it has to be a different kind of control.
I want to find out from the Secretary, now that there is an increase in the minimum wage, how does that affect the recurrent expenditure?
I don't know that it affects it in a significant manner, because I know we increase CPEP and URP wages, and I believe, I'm not too sure, I think they are over the minimum wage. What we may see increases in are the services that we pay for, security, janitorial. We expect to see some increases in those expenditures.
So does that automatically force a deficit because you would have allocated or requested a recurrent expenditure for a particular salary, but now it has been increased?
So we'll have to look, as I did indicate, it's difficult for me to say that to you now because I don't know the macro effect of it in terms of if we will incur a deficit. But I expect that the expenditures may go over what we anticipate in terms of allocation, because I'm not even sure what the allocations are for those specific line items. Right. But there may be an impact, a negative impact in terms of the allocation and the expenditure.
All right. And finally, we have to wrap up. But now that you know what you have
Yes.
and you are going back to the drawing board, what impact does the opinion of Tobagonians have on what this administration would be prioritizing moving forward? Or maybe that's a question to ask the Chief Secretary.
No, I think I can answer that question. Our budget statement is a public document. And I think you have raised an excellent point here of going back to the drawing board and going back to the public before the recalibrated budget on what the priorities are. So I think I take your point that, we should be consulting and going back to the public to see exactly what does the public want out of these allocations for fiscal 2025. So I do agree with you that is a point that should be taken.
Mr. Jofil, in closing, because, limited resources is being given compared to what is being requested, do you think that moving forward, this administration should focus on alternative means of funding to supplement the overall request that was made for $1 billion for development expenditure for the fiscal 2024-2025?
All right, so I'll give you a perfect example. Last time I think I was here with you, we had a discussion about venture capital. Now, we have a venture capital company that was supposed to raise, I think it was 100 million of some sorts. And to date, I think it might have been, it's probably going on maybe 12 years now. The company has not raised 1 red cent. And the point I'm making is, the company should be able to make enough money to take care of ID Cuts business, to take care of all the special companies, whatever they need to do on other projects and so on. And I'm saying you have vehicles that are available that you can utilize to increase your capital, and you're not using those avenues. And I'm saying a perfect example of what you can utilize already having on the ground. You have a facility there to raise capital, to do stuff, and nothing is happening. So for me, it's about, we have to apply more thought to what we want to do, and this idea about 5% and 6%, and I think we could get more out of the arrangement, because I think if you sell an argument about a marina publicly, I think it's a hard argument for anybody to resist that we need development funding for this. You should float a bond for this because it makes sense and it will increase tourist flow into Tobago, etc., etc. I'm sure you can make a strong case for that rather than arguing for a 5% or a 6%. It's a whole different argument.
I just want to make a point on Mr. Jofil's venture capital. Both of us sat at different eras on venture capital. It's easy to say what you just said there. You sat on the board, I sat on the board, but it's easy to say that this company should have raised 100 million. I think that's what you said.
Yeah, sure.
And we have not raised a red cent. But I would like you to bring to the fore what are some of the challenges. It's not easy to just raise funding in a company like that. You sat on the board, and I'm sure you can. It's easy to come and just say that. But what are the challenges and what are the factors that must be taken into consideration on the point that you made?
Unfortunately, this wouldn't be the platform to discuss that, and we have to give Mr. Hislop the opportunity to make his closing remarks before we wrap up this evening.
So, I know I came in the conversation late, but I just want to remind us, concerning the minimum wage, that the minimum wage increase was for public sector workers. Mm-hmm. We'll see whether or not the private sector follows suit, but it was for public sector workers. The other thing I want to reemphasize, and I want to agree with Mr. Jofil. His discourse this evening was very enlightening, that the conversation really needs to move from we fighting for percentages and whether we have enough, whether we're getting enough of the national budget, but really about what are we bringing to the table? What is there, not only for us as Tobago, but what is there for the nation on a whole? And to also remind us that the percentages have never really changed. And there has been a level of development in Tobago in the past that should now be a platform for greater development. But we have to have a plan. And if we don't have a plan, if we don't know where we're going, then if you get $5 billion for development, if you don't know where you're going, it's going to go through you like a dose of salts. So the reality is that we have to have a plan. We have to know where we're going. And I re-emphasize that schools were built, hospitals were built, health centers were built, community centers, people were sent to university to further their education with the same sort of percentages. But you have to have a plan. And the central government as well has, on top of what it has given to Tobago as its allocation, has committed to do other things within Tobago for the benefit of the island. We talk about the diversification of, or divesting, of Magdalena and possibility of another major hotel brand coming back. These sorts of things, the marina, all of these things speak to where do we go as an island, but we have to have a plan.
Okay. We look forward to hearing more from you as the week goes by here on Tobago Updates, so that you will have the opportunity to adequately flesh out some of those points, as well as the other members on the panel tonight. So if you guys wanted to hear more from them specifically, we see for Mr. Barry Jofield a number of requests to hear more. So hopefully we see you on this week as we continue our discussions on that post-budget debrief. Unfortunately, this is where we come to an end tonight. We want to thank you guys for being, such a wonderful audience. Thank you for your likes, your shares, and your comments. Thank you for, keeping the discussion online and offline amicable this evening. And again, we want to say thank you and have a great night.